The autumn wind whispered through the wooden platform of Cedar Ridge Station, carrying with it the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. Sarah Elizabeth Harper clutched her worn leather satchel closer to her chest, her heart beating like a frightened bird against her ribs. The train that had brought her west was already pulling away, its black smoke dissolving into the golden evening sky. She had come so far, from the crowded tenements of Boston to this frontier town nestled between rolling hills and endless prairie, all because of a letter. A letter from a man named Thomas McKenna who needed a wife and a woman who needed hope. But now, standing alone on the platform as the last passengers disappeared into the gathering dusk, Sarah wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The station was quieter than she had expected. A few men in worn boots and wide-brimmed hats lingered near the general store, their voices low and their glances curious. Sarah smoothed her brown traveling dress and tried to look more confident than she felt. She had written to Mr. McKenna weeks ago, telling him which train she would arrive on. Surely he would come for her soon. Minutes passed. The sun sank lower, painting the wooden buildings in shades of amber and rust. Sarah's hands grew cold despite her gloves. She sat down on a weathered bench near the platform's edge, her satchel beside her like a faithful companion. Maybe he changed his mind, she whispered to herself, the words barely audible above the wind. It wouldn't be the first time someone had found her lacking. Back in Boston, she had worked as a seamstress in a factory where the hours were long and the pay was small. The other girls often talked about beaux and marriages, but Sarah had always been too quiet, too plain. At 24, she had resigned herself to spinsterhood until she saw the advertisement in the newspaper. Widower seeks respectable woman for marriage, good home provided, must be kind to children. Children, the word had made her heart leap with something she had almost forgotten, hope. Now, as the shadows grew longer, that hope was fading like the last light of day. A small sound made her look up, soft footsteps on the wooden planks. Sarah turned and saw a little girl approaching, her blonde hair braided and tied with blue ribbons that matched her woolen coat. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, and she was carrying something precious, a well-loved teddy bear with one ear slightly askew. The child stopped a few feet away, studying Sarah with serious blue eyes. "Are you waiting for someone?" the little girl asked, her voice clear and sweet. Sarah managed a gentle smile. "I was supposed to be," she said carefully, "but I think perhaps they forgot about me." The child tilted her head, considering this. "Papa forgets things sometimes too. Yesterday he forgot to make me breakfast, so I made myself bread and jam, but I spilled the jam on Buttons here." She held up the teddy bear. "See, there's still a little red spot on his paw." "Buttons is a very fine bear," Sarah said warmly, "and you were very clever to make your own breakfast." The little girl beamed at the praise. She took a step closer, then another, until she was standing right in front of Sarah's bench. "My name is Emma McKenna," she said. "What's yours?" Sarah's breath caught. McKenna, this was Thomas McKenna's daughter. "My name is Sarah," she said softly. "Sarah Harper. I came here to meet your papa." Emma's eyes grew wide. "You're the lady from the letter? Papa's been so worried. He wanted to come fetch you himself, but Mrs. Henderson, she's the lady who watches me, she got sick today and had to go home. Papa couldn't leave me alone, but he was afraid you'd think he didn't want you to come." Relief flooded through Sarah like warm honey. He hadn't forgotten her. He hadn't changed his mind. "He sent me to find you," Emma continued, bouncing slightly on her toes. "Well, not exactly sent me, I sort of came on my own, but I knew you'd be here and I knew you must be worried." Sarah looked around the now empty platform. "You came by yourself. Does your papa know where you are?" Emma's cheeks turned pink. "Not exactly," she admitted, "but our house is just down that street past the church and the bakery. I've walked it 100 times, maybe 1,000. Despite everything, Sarah found herself smiling. This little girl had such spirit, such determination. She reminded Sarah of herself at that age before life had taught her to be cautious and afraid. "Well then," Sarah said, standing up and shouldering her satchel. "Perhaps you could show me the way. I imagine your papa is quite worried about both of us by now." Emma nodded eagerly and reached out to take Sarah's free hand. Her small fingers were warm and trusting. As they began to walk down the main street, Emma chattered about everything they passed: the church with the bell that rang every Sunday, the bakery where Mr. Peterson made the best cinnamon rolls in 3 counties, the schoolhouse where she would start attending next year. But as they walked, Sarah noticed something else. The way Emma held tightly to her teddy bear, the way she glanced up at Sarah with a mixture of hope and uncertainty, the careful way she chose her words when she talked about her papa and their quiet house. "Emma," Sarah said gently as they passed the church, "can I ask you something? What happened to your mama?" Emma's step slowed. "She got sick when I was little," she said quietly. "Papa says she went to be with the angels. He has a picture of her on the mantle, and sometimes I see him looking at it when he thinks I'm sleeping." Sarah's heart squeezed, this poor little girl growing up without a mother's touch, and her father trying to raise her alone while carrying his own grief. "Papa tries real hard," Emma continued as if she could read Sarah's thoughts. "But sometimes I think he gets lonely, and sometimes—" She stopped walking altogether and looked up at Sarah with those serious blue eyes. "Sometimes I pretend my mama is still here. I pretend she tucks me in at night and sings me songs and teaches me how to braid my hair proper." They had reached a small white house with a wraparound porch and warm light glowing in the windows. A man's silhouette paced back and forth behind the curtains, and Sarah could see his obvious distress even from the street. "That's Papa," Emma said. "He's probably worried sick about me." She paused, then tugged on Sarah's hand. "Miss Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." Emma looked down at her boots, then back up at Sarah. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but her words hit Sarah's heart like a bell tolling. "If Papa likes you and if you like him, can you be my mommy?" The simple, heartfelt question nearly brought tears to Sarah's eyes. Here was this brave little girl who had walked through town by herself to find a stranger, asking for the one thing Sarah had always dreamed of giving, a mother's love. Sarah knelt down so she was at Emma's eye level. "Emma," she said softly, "I would be honored to be your mama if your papa agrees, but you should know something. I've never been a mama before. I might not always know the right thing to do." Emma's face lit up like sunrise. "That's okay," she said seriously. "I've never had a mama I could remember. We can learn together." Before Sarah could respond, the front door of the house burst open. A tall man with dark hair and worried eyes came running down the porch steps, his relief visible from across the yard. "Emma, thank God, I was about to—" He stopped short when he saw Sarah taking in her brown dress and travel-worn appearance. "You must be Miss Harper. I am so terribly sorry. I never meant for you to wait alone at the station. I sent word, but—" "Papa," Emma interrupted, still holding Sarah's hand. "I found her. And Papa, I asked her something important." Thomas McKenna looked from his daughter to Sarah, confusion and hope warring in his expression. Sarah stood up slowly, Emma's small hand still clasped in hers. "Mr. McKenna," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "your daughter asked if I could be her mama. I told her that would depend on whether you and I suit each other, but I want you to know, I already love her, and I would be proud to call her my daughter." The three of them stood there in the golden lamplight spilling from the house, autumn leaves swirling around their feet while the most important question hung in the air between them. Thomas McKenna looked at his daughter, brave, hopeful Emma, and then at Sarah, who had traveled so far on nothing but faith and the dream of a family. "Miss Harper," he said quietly, "I think we're going to suit each other just fine." And as Emma cheered and Buttons the teddy bear was lifted high in celebration, Sarah Elizabeth Harper finally understood that sometimes the very best things come to those who are brave enough to believe they deserve love.